Hey, welcome to School Night 15. School Night 15, and this one's going to be about not limiting your options. And if that sounds overly generalized, like something a high school guidance counselor would say, then good, because this is School Night TV after all. Here comes a Buzz. Hey, Buzz. Buzz Aldrin. Nothing I can do about it, so you're going to have to hear the little buzz in the background. Um, so, not limiting your options, it sounds so overly generalized. Keep an open mind. What you got to do is you got to keep an open mind, not limit yourself. And you hear that, but it doesn't really resonate with you. It didn't resonate with me. It's still a struggle because we put ourselves in boxes, other people put us in boxes, and then you end up in a box at the end of your life and you were limited. You were limited. And your tombstone says this guy was limited. Uh, but really, if you're not in the place you want to be, you can't afford to limit yourself. You can't afford to exclude any option. I think the most general way to put this very generalized topic is if you're scaling a cliff face, or even if you're, just climbing a rock wall at the rock gym, you can't afford to choose which rock you're going to grab hold of to climb to the top. Or go down. It's upward, downward, left, right, diagonal. You can't. It doesn't matter what direction you're heading on the cliff face. You can't afford to exclude any of those little nubs. Those little. You can't afford. See, I wanted to make this video just to get to that point. You can't exclude yourself from grabbing any of those little nubs. But really, it's the truth. You can't decide which rock you're gonna grab. Maybe you have like a couple options. Maybe there's a little indentation you can choose that looks a little better than that one or whatever. But generally, you can't choose especially if you're climbing up. And people can climb any way they want. But if you're striving to climb up, you're not where you want to be, and you want to get up to the top of the cliff. You can't choose which rock you're gonna grab. And it's true for everything. It's true for everything. It really is, though. Think about writing a riff. Think about playing guitar, writing music, anything like that. You can't afford to exclude any note. If you're striving for something beyond just what's expected of you, what's easy, paint by numbers, because you can be like, I'm going to write, a riff that sounds like Celtic Frost, and we all know what that is. Not we all, I know a lot of people on here probably don't. All 20 listeners don't have the same points of reference. But at the same time, like, let's use Celtic Frost as an example. We know what a Celtic Frost riff sounds like. We know those sorts of, like, those power chord thuds, those chromatic, we know what that sounds like. And if you're just trying to do that, which many people do, think about all the bands in, several different genres of underground metal who have just been like, we're going to sound like Celtic Frost. We're going to worship Celtic Frost. And there's people who will appreciate that. And I'm not saying there isn't a time and a place to do something that's kind of paint by numbers like that. And some great things, some great original things can come through paint by numbers. But I'm just, every time I say something, I just hear it back. Some great things can come through paint by numbers. But still, it's still paint by numbers. And if you're striving for something beyond yourself, beyond what's currently available to you, beyond your current inspirations, if you're striving to reach the next level, whatever it is you're trying to do, whatever context you're in, you can't afford to exclude any chord, any note. If you're writing a riff and you want to take it to the next level, you cannot exclude anything, no matter how much you think something might not fit. And you'll know if it doesn't fit. You'll feel it. You'll know you're not doing the right thing. You'll know that it's the wrong sound. Just like if you grab a rock, you're going to know if that rock is shaky or just that rock isn't going to take you somewhere. Or you'll grab it and you'll realize that, hey, there's no rock from there. I grabbed that other rock that was available, but there's nothing beyond that. And maybe there is nothing. You grab that next thing and you realize, oh, there's nothing beyond that. I can't do that. You have to scale back down, find another path up. I don't know. But that's how you know your limits, though. That's the most literal way to know your limits. I literally cannot climb any higher, even though that rock looked really good and like I got a good firm grip on it. Even though that note sounded good, I can't really go anywhere from there. And I think about it too philosophically, because just coming from a very secular background, growing up in a secular household, being surrounded by secular people, being surrounded by secular people my whole life, I didn't really think of Christianity as an option, and I still don't. Although I was joking to somebody yesterday how it's like, I'm glad it's 2018 because, if this were sometime in the past, I'd probably be at that point in my life where I'd become born again or otherwise like take on some really like righteous spiritual transformation. Not that I'm not doing that. I think I am trying to do that. Trying so hard. No, I'm doing something. I'm trying to do something. Hoping. I'm just praying. I'm just praying for something. I'm praying for that note to come out of the sky. And I guess I'll talk about that for a second. I want to go back to Christianity, but I think that's what a lot of people do is they pray for that next rock. They pray for that next note on a guitar, that one they're looking for. They just hope it's going to be there. And they forget that, there's a lot of hard work you have to do mentally and maybe physically, both mentally and physically to get there. But you can reach a point where those things just become intuitive, where suddenly you start to you feel almost automated, and you're finding the rocks, you're finding the notes. And that's rare, even for someone who knows how to tap into that sort of flow. It's rare to be able to do that. But I do think you can prepare yourself for it. And part of that is through working hard on yourself, literally, like physically hard. I know that having self-discipline, eating well, exercising, you'll hear it time and time again. There's podcasts who talk about this that are, have a much more profound way of getting that message across. But still, it's something that's true to me. I've found that there is a great deal of freedom in discipline, and it's something that's going to be a struggle. Discipline isn't easy for a reason, but once you kind of get into the routine of it, you feel this sense of freedom in everything you do, and it's a heavy duty thing, but it's also very light. It's strangely light. Like not drinking. It's been about 3.5 months since I drank, and keeping that discipline up feels beyond just the immediate, like, I'm not going to drink. Beyond that, the whole experience feels, they're making phone, there's my phone, speaking of heavy. Every episode now is going to have a phone buzzing. It's going to be the theme. It's just the world we live in. But I'm distracted by it too. See, that's the world we live in again. But having a discipline is very, very good for being able to find those next rocks, finding those next notes. If you're disciplined, if you work hard on your skills, and discipline is multifaceted, because I know for me that working out, things like that, affect my abilities as a creative person. They affect my abilities as, they affect my thoughts. They affect it. Really, everything bleeds into everything else. Nothing you do exists in a vacuum. Even vacuuming, even the act of vacuuming does not exist in a vacuum. You're inside of a house. You're inside of a house, and there's carpet, and you're vacuuming it up. And nothing exists inside a vacuum. Not even those spiders that you vacuum up because you're too afraid to. I don't know. I don't know what you do with spiders. So discipline makes it easier to know. It gives you a level of clarity, but not clarity in terms of being able to, like, when you have that clarity, it makes things kind of automatic. And when you're doing something that feels good, but it's automatic, or that you should be doing, I don't mean feels good as in pleasure necessarily, but I mean something that feels satisfying, that makes you feel like you're doing the right thing, whether it's for yourself, somebody else, for whatever. When that feels automatic, that is the best feeling in the world, because it's not really a feeling. You're just kind of going with it. You're just kind of flowing with it. You're going with it. You're flowing with it. To get to that point, and you can't. I know that I'm not at a point where I can just access that all the time, but I know that I have an easier time accessing that now than ever. And when my hand just naturally finds the rocks, I'm just like, holy shit. I have to think about it later, because in the moment I'm not thinking about it, and that's the beauty of it. That's the true, that's satisfaction, is realizing it after the fact that you're like, wow. But realizing it after the fact is something else, and you never want to rest on your laurels. You never, if you've climbed a cliff face, you don't want to look back and say, and think about every rock you grabbed. You don't want to like pat yourself on the back for climbing it, because you'll feel that. You don't need to pat yourself on the back if you feel it. And if you pat yourself on the back, you're going to fall into a trap. Don't have too much more to say on that. I'll have to think more about that. But it's true. I think the more that you rest on your laurels, the more you pat yourself on the back. And I'm very guilty of that. I'm very guilty of resting on my own laurels. And as a person whose deadly sin is pride, that's something that I always struggle with, always, and always will. But yeah, so once you've done it, you don't really need to, because I mean that's a thing. You see that pitfall that a lot of people have when they're trying to improve themselves. Look at me swiveling. Check out me swiveling with my nutsack coffee. But nutsack coffee. That's like one of those modern, like how coffees and like beers and like every IPA is like, there's like dog butt IPA and like everything has names like that now. It's like nutsack coffee is going to be my coffee company. And people are going to ask, and I'm going to be like, I had this like folk art coffee mug. And I know I talked about this last episode, but still, this nutsack coffee, this pear on my coffee mug that looks like a nutsack. And so I called my coffee company Nutsack Coffee, and I'm cool and hip. We hire local artists to decorate our packaging, and we don't pay them. We give them exposure. How you liking that exposure, huh? You like that exposure? But you see with, anyway, self-improvement, nutsacks and self-improvement, you see when people are trying to improve themselves, they pat themselves on the back. And studies show that when people make a big announcement prior to taking the steps to improve themselves, like, hey, everybody, I've decided to quit smoking. Hey, I'm going to quit drinking. Or I'm going to start going to the gym this year. I'm going to start going to the gym this year. And people they're like, good for you. They congratulate them on something they haven't done. And people do that online. They do it in person. They do it. And when they do that, like the study showed that, and studies are weird. I'm kind of critical of a lot of studies, scientific studies. But studies show that when someone does that, they feel like they already accomplished it, and that is a major roadblock. They're already patting themselves on the back for something that they haven't done, and I went like that, and I didn't even touch my back because that's really I didn't intentionally do that, but thinking about it, that's really what they're doing. They're just giving themselves like this air pat for something they haven't done, and their friends are like empowering them for that because that's kind of how we've been conditioned. It's like someone's like, I feel like we live in this world where someone goes like, I'm going to go to the gym this year. And their friends and people, American Idol sob story style are like, you ain't no victim. You're a survivor. You're going to do it. Nobody can stop you. Yeah. Congratulations. That's a good character. But people do that when someone hasn't done anything. And there's this tendency, too, when someone actually does do something to kind of minimize it, too, I think. When someone does, and I think when someone has done something, it's okay because they don't need that. Like I said, if they've climbed the cliff face, they know they've climbed it, and they don't need to revisit that. They don't need to, run down memory lane of every rock they grabbed. Or if you write a riff. I love the example of riffs because riffs, I don't know, for me, just being into metal, being into just all sorts of music that relies on the riff. There's something, I don't know, just I don't know. Riffs are a whole topic for another time, but just I think a lot about individual note choices and how that transforms just simple music into something that feels supernatural and, dare I say, spiritual to me, even in otherwise not spiritual music. That's a genre, not spiritual music. I don't listen to that not spiritual music. But there's that self-congratulatory, and not just self-congratulatory, other people congratulating you for things you haven't done. uh, and that gets in people's way. Um, it's like, I mean, I love the example of the cliff face, because so much of life, it does feel that way. Even in the best of circumstances, you're climbing a cliff, baby. And if you tell people I'm climbing a cliff and they're like, congratulations, or I'm going to climb that cliff, and someone says congratulations, it's like there's this break in logic. And when you hear that, it makes sense. Like, I think anybody could understand that example. Like, well, you haven't even tried to climb it yet. And that makes sense. But really, the same exact principle applies to doing other things, to like working out, to like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like, if somebody tells you, like, I'm gonna record an album, I'm gonna make a drawing, and then you're like, awesome, congrats. Like, I mean, it's great to encourage somebody. There's a difference between encouragement and congratulating somebody. A phrase that I used like a few years ago. Here we are being self-congratulatory. Here's a phrase I came up with, but it's one that I came up with for like a title of something, and it was a congratulation unearned. Because I know for me, because I am somebody who, like I said, I suffer from pride. I suffer. But I know that I do have a tendency to kind of like be like, here's this thing I did once that I'm proud of, and I don't know what I expect from that. And I try my best to avoid doing that unless it's like for a specific goal that's going to make my life better or make a situation better somehow. But a congratulation unearned, it's not just that that gets in someone's way when they're looking for a pat on the back for something they haven't done. It's also, it feels really dirty. I know in work situations, one thing that made me feel crazy at a job was getting congratulated for things that I feel like I didn't do, or that were very, very minor, where it was like, oh my God, great job. Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, for something that was really just nothing. And then the opposite, like when I busted my back on something, uh, getting very little, props in return. And in work, it's important to get some pats on the back from people. It is, because I mean, that's how, I don't know. That's how a business shows value. I don't know. That's how a business shows like appreciation for you. So it was, but it really, to go back to the first example, like it felt really dirty to me when I would get congratulated for things that I really had a very small part of, or that required very little effort on my part. And it plays into the whole, like, one of the big criticisms of my generation with the parents. What do people say about parents? Like the ribbon, the participation ribbon, that kind of thing. Like, the parents are wearing kid gloves. I guess parents should handle kid. If parents are going to wear gloves, I guess they should wear kid gloves. I don't know if people say that, but there's the participation ribbon thing where it's like all the kids got a participation ribbon. But that's kind of become, I hate when people say that now. It's just become, I don't know. I'm hearing stuff. I'm hearing things. I'm hearing the plane. The plane is flying over, and they're going to drop participation ribbons off and give them to all the kids, because that's the world we live in. I wish they did it that way. But the participation ribbon thing, where it's like you're giving kids, like, it's like going so far from this, away from this time period where kids are getting hit and told that they're nothing and all that, to this other thing where kids are like getting told that like they're the most amazing thing in the world for doing nothing. And both things are bad, obviously. What you want to do, here's me telling people how to parent kids as someone who's basically a grown child myself. But still, it's like, I think what you want to do is you want to teach your kids how to work hard, to be proud of what they do when they do work hard, whether it involves elements that come naturally to them or not. But anyway, I don't want to talk about parenting. I don't know anything about it. I'm just talking about climbing cliff faces and planes flying over cliffs, dropping off participation ribbons, when people ain't even climbed the cliffs. They ain't even climbed the cliffs. Anyway, but to get back to the very first thing I was talking about, was the idea of not limiting yourself. You can't afford to limit yourself from any single option. And I brought up Christianity before I went off on some other tangent. And for me, like, I grew up being very averse to Christianity, or organized religion in general, and it wasn't reinforced in my household. My mom was always one of those people who was kind of like, I'm spiritual but not religious, which is awesome. I like that. Although that phrase, not in her case, but like, because I mean, she has reasons for saying that. But a lot of times you hear that and it just sounds empty and new agey. And I think it's okay that when people say that, it's kind of empty, because it's like, chances are they do have some reason for saying that, and they just don't want to bother you with like the crazy spiritual path they've taken. Because I know that, like in my case, I really enjoy talking about my own path in life right now, but I know that it can be kind of oppressive to be like, I'm on a spiritual journey. Let me tell you about my spiritual journey. I do want to be a preacher someday, though. Let me tell you about my spiritual journey. Sorry, I apologize. I don't want to be that person, so it's easier just to be like, I believe in something. But yeah, with Christianity, I've never really sat down and read the Bible. I remember staying in hotel rooms as a kid and kind of thumbing through it. As a joke, one time I was staying with my family, and I pulled it out. And it was like the Gideons, left here by the Gideons. And there was an X-Men character named Gideon, so of course that came to mind. And he was this weird character. I don't even know like what his role was. I think he was a bad guy, and I think he had swords. I'm trying to remember. I might be confusing his swords with Shatterstar, which is a great name, Shatterstar. It's a fucking cool name. But Gideon, he was like this guy. He was like all bald except for this like big blonde ponytail sticking off the back of his head like a horse tail. Maybe it was green, but I think the toy was yellow. It was yellowy green, kind of a yellowy green horse tail sticking off the back of his head. Anyway, so I remember like jokingly reading parts of the Bible to my family because it was like a joke that I would be reading it. But I have thumbed through it a couple times, but I'm not someone who's ever going to sit down and really read the Bible. However, I've absorbed little bits of it here and there. The phrase "all is vanity," and I may be taking it out of context, but there's a part in the Bible that says "all is vanity," and that had a pretty profound effect on me when I was younger, because someone who struggles with pride, as somebody who sees vanity in a lot of what we do and tries to fight it, that really made me accept the fact that all is vanity, and fighting vanity is often just as vain as staring in the mirror and flexing or whatever the hell you do. So it's really about trying to strike a balance, Hey, half a sentence taken out of context, probably from the Bible, had a profound effect on me, and that's exactly what I mean. You can't afford to limit yourself. The Bible probably has a number of things in it that, no matter how cool and satanic and rebellious and punk rock you are, like, there's probably something in there that could change your perspective, at the least change your perspective, if not change your life. And I think it's true. The other night I was, reading some stuff. I don't want to go into it, but some stuff from Eastern spirituality, and like, I reject that sort of Western New Agey approach to that. But I also recognize like universal truths in all of it, and I can't afford, like right now in my life, I cannot afford to limit myself from that stuff. I can't afford to put up a blocker and be like, oh, I don't really like the imagery of. I don't really like cliche, Buddhist imagery, so I'm not going to take anything from that. Because that's my natural tendency, is to be like, I don't like the aesthetic. I don't like the way that looks. I don't like the way that sounds. I don't like that word. And then just like shut myself down from an entire, not an entire idea, an entire set of ideas, a multifaceted set of ideas. And, chances are one of those ideas could be spun, even if I have to spin it into my own weird ego world, maybe I can still gain something from it. That's what I mean. And people put themselves, and then I think a problem though with that is that people do put themselves in these ideological boxes. I think you can get political with it, where I know that with the world being what it is, there are people who see this. They consider themselves left-wing or right-wing, and they believe that those ideologies, that those groups, let's get away from the groups. They believe just those ideologies have everything they need, and they believe that the other ideologies, say the right-wing, has nothing they need, and in fact is taking everything away from what they need. When there's a chance that there's something in right-wing ideologies that a left-wing person could benefit from, and not just so they can be like me and be like, oh, I have a balanced take on all this political turmoil. I'm better than both of you, because that's a trap that's easy to fall into. I'm a moderate. I'm a righteous moderate. I never liked the term moderate, because my beliefs are very intense and they split off in different directions. And sometimes my fucking beliefs about politics, spirituality, everything, all these big philosophical grand things, sometimes they change during the course of a day and change back. Sometimes they change based on my mood. That's something that we never acknowledge, is that sometimes all of that shit changes based on how you're feeling. I'm swiveling. I'm flowing. I'm swiveling. I think this entire video is just me swiveling, which is funny. I don't mind. I don't mind if you don't mind. I ain't mad if you ain't mad about the swiveling. Give a man a swivel chair. Teach a man to swivel, and he'll swivel for a day. Or no, I don't know. Give a man a chair, and he'll swivel for a day. Teach a man to swivel, he'll swivel for a lifetime. Doesn't make any sense, but I was trying. Man. Keep on trying. I was talking about serious stuff. Yeah, just not being able to afford limiting yourself. If you're a left-winger, I really recommend looking for some value in what right-wing people are saying. Obviously not the toxic ones who are on each side. Don't look at the toxic people. Look at the people who seem kind of at peace with what they believe in, and they might be advocating for things you disagree with. But look for the people who are I love it. I love it when my voice cracks at this point at 32 years old. But look for the people who seem at peace with their beliefs, and you might disagree with them. They might get heated sometimes about what they believe in, but look for those people, because chances are they have something that you could take, and it doesn't mean, that's the thing too, is that people are afraid to acknowledge value. It's like somebody is afraid to acknowledge that the Bible or a Christian rock band or anything could offer them something of value, because they think if they accept that that group has something of value, they have to buy the whole fucking cow or whatever, in order to drink. They think that if they take a sip of that milk and that milk benefits them, that means that they have to accept the whole cow. Bad metaphor. I know there's all these metaphors. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? But I think if you're talking about ideas, that's actually a good way to think, you don't have to buy the cow if you're getting the milk for free. And that's true for getting ideas, being enriched by just an idea from something. You can take a sentence out of the Bible that profoundly affects you and changes your life for the better, but you don't have to accept the whole Bible. You don't have to become a Christian. You don't actually have to do anything. You can just accept it. And the same goes for creating. The same goes for if you're creating a painting, it's like I don't use the color pink. If you have some big vision for not using the color pink that is important, don't use the color pink. But still, it's like if you're working on a painting and you're like, I just don't use the color pink. Pink's gay. If I use pink, even though it'll naturally enhance this part of the painting, even though the color pink would be the right color, the right complementary color for this part of the painting, I don't use pink. We don't use pink in these paintings. It's bullshit. That's bullshit. Use the color pink if that's going to be the right color. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit your palette. What are you doing? You're eliminating your palette. By limiting your palette, you're eliminating your palette. How's that for a head fuck? But really, it's the truth. Don't limit your options. You can't afford it. You really can't. If you're not where you want to be, you cannot afford to limit yourself. And I know that sounds drastic and serious. You cannot afford it. Just like if you have a serious mental condition, you can't afford to limit your options for treatment. You can't pick and choose. If you're suffering from a psychotic episode, not that you might not have much of a choice at that point, but if you're suffering from something, you can't afford to limit your options for treatment. Why would you? Yeah, it's good to weigh the pros and cons, of whatever it is you're going to do. Like if it was like a medication or something, it'd be good to be like, well, what are the side effects? Always look for the side effects. Always look for the side effects. Listen, nephew, always look for the side effects, but you can't afford to limit your options. It's true, though. It's true. Let's leave it at that. I'm spiraling. We like to spiral here, but sometimes we got to close the spiral down. Sometimes we got to limit where the spiral goes if we want to make any kind of lasting impact on the world through YouTube videos. Because someday, my big goal is that someday the aliens are going to watch this. It's going to be like instead of a time capsule, it's going to be a YouTube capsule. And they're going to be able to, like, through three-dimensional technology, enter this room and hang out with me. The aliens are. So I want to have these videos available to them so they can, like, I don't know, man. You think I know what I'm talking about? Because I don't. I certainly don't. If you know what I'm talking about, get a hold of me. Because I can't limit my options, so I'm open to your ideas about what I'm talking about, too. How's that for a closer? Peace.